UN humanitarian chief and former president of Chile, Michelle Bachelet. Let's speak to Ambassador Joe Keshi, former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He joins us virtually from Abuja. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for your time on the program.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Let's focus a little bit first on the peace negotiations that were happening in Istanbul, Turkey. Now we're having clear signs of what is on the table, even though both sides are playing down any hope that there is some kind of breakthrough, but we're having some signs of the proposals. For example, there's to be, at least from the Ukrainian proposal, a 15-year consultation period about Crimea. And of course, Ukraine is now seriously looking at having a neutral status. What do you make of this?
Well, you know, one thing about negotiating for peace in conflicts like this is that both parties must go to the negotiating table with tremendous amount of sincerity to bring the conflict to an end. As it is today, I really do not see the Russians interested in any, I do not see the Russians prepared as of now to make this or to make any gesture or overture to end the conflict. As for what is on the table, look, I have said this in other, I think even on your own, not particularly on your program, but in other channels program, that when you look at the conditions being made by the Russians, you ask yourself, is this the reason why this war was started in the first instance? The Russians, as of today, occupy Crimea, so they do not have to begin to go to war to demand for it. The Russians occupy the Donbas area. They've occupied it for the last 6 years. So they do not have to go to war to destroy the whole of Ukraine to demand for it. Ukraine has not officially, joined NATO. It's only an expression of interest. And by the way, people tend to forget that it was also part of Russian pressure on the last regime in Ukraine that brought the current president to power. And it has to do over the question of whether Ukraine should join the EU or whether Ukraine should join NATO. So the question is there any other reason that Putin decided not just to go to war, but to honestly destroy Ukraine? Look, this is no longer a war between two sides. This is an attempt to annihilate, to really completely destroy the country of Ukraine. Look at the massive destruction, the devastation in Mariupol, for example. That city is completely gone. That city is completely gone. So all these peace talks, as the Russians themselves have declared that nothing much has been achieved who shows you that they are on the table, just as a result of pressure from people like Macron and the president of Turkey. But the truth of the matter is that until they achieve whatever objective they have, which is not very clear, they are not going to give up. And as such, the peace talk will certainly produce nothing for now.
At the beginning of your answer, you referenced the fact that both parties need to come to the table with sincerity and probably honesty of purpose and all of that. Now, one of the things that brings parties to the table to negotiate is pressure and leverage from other parties. You've talked about the fact that, and it's quite obvious that Ukraine has suffered a great deal of devastation. So one cannot but, know why they are at the table seeking peace. But on the side of the Russians, who has leverage to make them, approach this with more sincerity, going by your words, and probably with a more transparent and obvious set of objectives that everybody can see and can measure when they are achieved? Who do you think has this kind of leverage?
Regrettably, as of now, I don't see anybody. I told the Russians, the Chinese, could play, but the Chinese are playing hide and seek in this matter. Is the Chinese get involved and stop being neutral or supposedly neutral and begin to press Russia to end this war? Perhaps we might have some peace or some modicum of peace in Ukraine. But as of today, I do not see anybody. Look, let's be sincere with ourselves. Let's honestly face what is on the ground. Putin is just biding his time until he achieves what he wants to achieve in Ukraine. And when you look at the pattern of the war, the pattern of the destruction, the pattern of the military hits, you begin to doubt whether there's nothing more in Putin's mind. I sometimes say to myself that for whatever reason, Putin just wants to punish Ukraine for refusing to be part of the Russian Federation, or for refusing to concede to whatever demand he's been making on Ukraine. And by the way, this demand on Ukraine did not start with the current leadership. It started long before this leadership. So apparently, Ukraine is suffering not just because of this leadership, but because successive leadership have refused to listen to Putin. And therefore, when you look at what is being hit, civilian population, hospitals, schools, parks, residential buildings, streets, critical infrastructure, you honestly begin to wonder whether there's a pattern. But you know what we do say? There's a pattern in madness. And you can actually see it in this, as it concerns the devastation that Ukraine has suffered. It's almost unbelievable that a nation like Russia will get up and begin to destroy another neighbor for no apparent reason, because you want certain things that they have. In the meantime, you are holding those things in your two hands. And this is why, my heart bleeds really anytime I listen to the news and the devastation that Ukraine is suffering. You are holding Crimea. You are holding Donbass. What else do you want, for goodness sake? Why don't you just occupy the Crimea, which you have been holding for how many years? In fact, Putin celebrated recently 6 years of holding Crimea. So why are you now invading to demand for Crimea? It doesn't make sense. You are
let me ask you, Ambassador. Sorry, my apologies for intruding on your thoughts, but let me ask you on the basis of what you've said now. The other side of this is that the Ukrainians were expecting a lot more help if this confrontation came to where it is now. And yet, consistently and in spite of all the destruction that is visible and all that has happened since this war started more than 5 weeks ago now, the West, NATO, the EU, the United States have refused to do the two things that the Ukrainians say could make a difference. One is put boots on the ground, and second is declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine.
You have to understand in the first instance why this is very challenging for the West. But here is what my take. As of today, the West, let's be honest with ourselves again, the West has been tremendously helpful. The ability of the Ukrainians to fight today has been as a result of the assistance provided, by the West. For me, the mistake that the West made from the onset was to remove the threat of force from the table. If they had insisted that force is that everything is on the table, including force, I'm not sure that the Russians would have ventured to attack Ukraine. That said, the second thing you need to understand is that I believe that this is part of what many of us have described as the miscalculation of the Russian leadership. Number one, they believe that with America tired of war, and you saw the chaotic, disengagement from Afghanistan, that the Americans will certainly not be in a hurry to put boots on the ground. Secondly, that with the disunity in NATO, that it will be very difficult for them to come together. And you know, the NATO law or rules or regulation is very easy. Ukraine has only expressed a desire to be a member of NATO. Ukraine is not a member of NATO. You know, so you cannot just take up a battle that is not, in reality, not yours. But what they have done over the last couple of 1 month is to provide resources for Ukraine to be able to defend itself. So it's not enough, and it will never be enough, obviously, because the war is continuous and it's on almost on everyday basis. Whatever you bring today could actually be exhausted tomorrow. So the West needs to continue to do the best they can to provide Ukraine with all what it needs now, beyond the declaring a no-flight zone, which they found very difficult to do because they do not want to be directly involved. If they become directly involved, look, that will change the dynamics of this war and could lead to more consequences than we currently can envisage.
Thank you so very much, Your Excellency Ambassador Joe Keshi, for your time this morning. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Coming up after the break, the IMF says the dollar dominance of the world's financial system has been chipped away by the war between Russia and Ukraine. Please join us again.